Well, hello. Welcome once again to the Church Solutions Podcast.
My name is Steve Lacy.
And my name is Phil Thompson, as the announcer said. Just we always like to get that out so people don't confuse us. Uh, Hi, Steve. How are you?
I'm doing good.
All right. It's good to be with you again today on our podcast. We do this almost every week, pretty much every week. I've been doing it for many moons, many years, as I've always said. And we're a company that helps churches and ministries primarily do streaming video, mobile apps, and church management stuff, website stuff. We've been doing it for almost 20 years now. So it's a pleasure to be here with you today. Thanks for spending some time. And speaking of helping churches and technical things, we don't always talk about technical things on the podcast, but today we're going to talk about improving your streaming video quality, and especially more than ever because we're in these COVID-19 times that don't seem to be letting up a whole lot. Your video is very important. Streaming video is very important for the people that either are not coming to your church because of the pandemic, or maybe you're not meeting at all, or maybe you are, but not everybody's showing up for various reasons. So we're going to talk about how you can improve your video quality, and we're going to do it all within 28 minutes.
Yes. So let me dispel a myth. I didn't talk to you about this before, but a lot of times we'll get customers that say, well, I'm going to go with streaming company XYZ because their quality's better. Or I'm going to go with, streaming company ABC because I just like I like the quality better. And what people don't understand is the quality is determined at your facility. It's not done by the streaming provider. Can't take a poor camera shot that's not lit well, that they don't get a good stream, and turn it into something that it's not. And vice versa. So the streaming quality is determined by you. So we're going to go through how to improve your streaming quality, and it's not by choosing a different streaming company. You will see no difference if you keep the same equipment and same practices and same settings that you had before, going with one company versus another. So
Yeah,
just
quality
wanted to,
wise. I mean, there may be some companies that have lousy servers and drop connections and
yeah, you may,
those
if
kind of things.
right,
But
if the stream goes away,
right.
most of the time that's also your connection's fault. But yes,
Yes.
if it's a poor streaming company, yeah, they're gonna drop the ball, and the stream's gonna go away, or things are gonna look, you know,
Right.
not right. But for the most part, if the system is functioning, it's gonna broadcast what you're sending.
Right.
So,
Yeah. That's good.
eh,
Yeah.
yeah, and so
Sure.
all the streaming companies, I think, are on a fairly level playing field. There may be some that are out there that are just super overloaded and don't have any resources to handle, the incoming streams, but that's going to be in the minority.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
most part,
Absolutely.
yep, streaming quality is determined at your
Yeah.
facility. We're going to go through how to make it better.
Yeah. So a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about today involves your encoder and your computer and some of those things. But I think what you want to just mention right off the top is that there's some other things you can do
Right.
in your facility that will make things look a lot better.
Right. So we have the privilege of dropping in on hundreds of services every week, so we can kind of see what's going on in different facilities. And some churches do a really good job where their picture just looks great. We've had customers in the past where we know what their bit rate is, but their picture looks really good, and it's not any crazy extreme quality settings. They're not sending a 4K signal and, or anything like that. And it boils down to primarily how a couple of things. One is how you light your subjects and how you don't light, or you light the background. So if you can set up, these are for free here. These are just, we're going to get through some of the technical pieces of this, but if the subject, which is usually the pastor or the worship band, is set apart from the background, they're going to look just a ton better, and the whole image is going to look better. So where I've seen really good setups has been where the background of the stage and that sort of thing is not well lit. It may be even dark, or they may force on purpose dark, and the subject though has a light on them, has a spot on them or something like that,
Mhm.
and it just really pops. So um, that's for free if you can adjust your lighting, and just be careful with your subjects and the backgrounds. Also, we just shot a video yesterday, and our video guy gave us some hints for. He said, don't wear a light colored shirt. Don't wear a white shirt with tight patterns on it, because it's gonna mess up the camera, and you're gonna look. It's gonna wash everything out. So you're saying if you got skin tones against a dark colored shirt, it's gonna look better on camera. So, and if you can leverage the background that's behind you, it's gonna look better too. So these are these are for free. I'm not a professional camera videographer
I'm
or
not a
anything,
videographer,
but I've
but
seen a
still,
lot of
yeah,
videos, right? It's
sure, done this
like
for
a,
years.
I'm not a
Yeah,
real doctor, but I've seen a lot of them on TV.
yeah.
So
Lighting, backdrop, and your camera too. Obviously, if you can
yes,
get a decent camera,
good camera.
you don't have to have a real expensive camera, but you can get a decent camera, and then how far away you are from your subject
Right.
uh, with that camera as well can make a difference. Yeah, very good. Okay, well, should we move on to a little more of the technical things, even though
Yeah,
I don't
sure.
know if that's really technical. So I wrote a little list that maybe we'll throw on a blog here later, but and some of these we're not going to spend a lot of time on because they're no brainers in my opinion. But the first thing I've got is always if you're using your computer to stream, and most of this what we're talking about today has to do with software based live encoders. Although now there's a lot more hardware based live encoders, which are boxes which are not associated with your computer, where the software you download on your computer and you would stream something like Wirecast or vMix or OBS. But primarily what we're talking about today is software. And the first thing I would mention is always reboot your computer and make sure it's updated. Update and reboot your computer. And don't do it a few minutes before your service is ready to go. Because if you're using Windows, which is Steve's favorite operating system, by the way, I'm saying that sarcastically.
Yeah.
If you're using especially Windows, sometimes they will sneak an update in on, especially if you've kept kicking it down the road a ways. They'll just force it on you eventually, and sometimes it can be 15, 20 minutes or longer. And if you've rebooted right before the service starts and you're busy doing an update, you're sunk. So, but reboot sometime earlier in the morning, because your computer, if it's running all the time, and I talk to part of what I do here is tech support, and I talk to a lot of people, and like they're having issues, and I go, when was the last time you rebooted your computer? Oh, I don't know. It's been a couple of weeks. It just runs all the time. It just sits here and runs. Well, even if it's not doing anything, it sits here and runs in your church. It's going to collect if information on the CPU and the processor starts getting bogged down. So always reboot your computer.
Yep. It's especially for Windows. It's a good thing to clean out the junk. So
Yeah.
we had I just recommend to everybody. They're starting to have computer problems. Like, when was the last time you rebooted? And they're like, whenever it tells me I have to or whatever. And so I've gotten the habit. Every Monday morning I reboot.
Yeah.
So
I try to
whether I need to
reboot
or
every
not.
day. Yeah, I
Yeah.
try to do it every day. I
Well,
try to
if
do
you're
it every
running Windows, yeah, you might want to do it every day or maybe every hour. But
Well, okay. All right. Well, we won't go any on that because that's pretty much self-explanatory. The other thing that we always encourage people to do, and we sound like a broken record on this, but check your upload speed. Don't take your internet service provider's word for your upload speed. You might sign up and, oh, we got the Megatron package and we do this and we got all this. It's not always accurate what they tell you, and depends on the whole situation. So I would do an upload speed. I would do a and when you do a speed check, you really are really interested in your upload speed. I would do one the morning you're going to stream, and maybe even closer to the time when you're
right.
actually going to turn the stream on, to double check that, because it changes. And I've told this story before at your church, where I used to be a part of that, the church online guy. For a couple of years in a row, Tiger Woods would come into town here, and big tournament and golf tournament, of course, and our internet would disappear a couple Sundays one time, and I don't know why that was. I don't know if the network stole our internet. They did something with our bandwidth. And I remember one time everything started going crazy. And I remember thinking, I got to call streaming church tech support. And I realized, wait, I am streaming church tech support. And I did an upload speed and there was like nothing. I mean, it was like, 100 megabytes or something. It was just crazy.
Kilobytes, it would have been. Yeah.
Kilobytes, 100 kilobytes.
100 meg would have been really
megabytes
good.
would be great. But no, it was like terrible. So check your upload speed, check it on a regular basis, and try to use something that may not always be associated with your provider.
Yeah. So, yeah, this is number one. People say, "Oh, it's buffering," or "I'm having problems with my stream." It's 9 times out of 10. Well, I don't know. 7 times out of 10 is the upload speed, and the other 30% of the time is one of the other things we're going to go through. So yeah. And it's really eye-opening, and we get it all the time. No, I pay for 30 megabits up, so I got 30 megabits up, and I'm like, well, let's humor me. And like, wow, you got 300 kilobits up right now. Well, why is that? I'm paying. Well, I'm calling my ISP guys. So yeah.
Well, and there are reasons which again we've gone into, but if you have open Wi-Fi, if people are walking into your building and they're connecting with their devices to your internet, it's going to change your internet. I call it internet atrophy. Nobody in the internet, no providers have ever used that term. I've coined it. I should trademark it, but it's internet atrophy. Your internet shrinks. It's when people are on it, and even people in your neighborhood. I mean, depending on the situation, you could have people, your neighbors could affect your internet. So it's not as stable as you might think it is.
Right. All right. We're going to have to pick up the pace here, huh?
Yep. We got to get moving. All right. So speaking of internet, we'd encourage you, if you can connect your stream with Ethernet cable, if possible, that would be ideal. Yes, you can use Wi-Fi. We have a lot of customers that use Wi-Fi. I'm streaming this right now with Wi-Fi, with Skype, but we have problems sometimes. And sometimes Wi-Fi can be problematic depending on where your router is and your modem and all that stuff is. So if you're able to use Ethernet to connect, that's ideal if possible.
All right. And then number 4 on the list is limiting ongoing tasks on the computer. Yeah. A lot of times we'll get, as I mentioned, 70% of the time it's internet problems, and then 29% of the time it's your CPU's. Like, oh, the CPU's at 100%, and so you want to make that job that your encoding computer's doing easier by having it just do that job rather than having to, I don't know, track attendance or display.
Some people.
Presentation software.
Some people, yes, presentation software. Some people will use that, and sometimes they can get away with it, but sometimes you can't. And again, as you pointed out, Windows just eventually breaks down over time, and your processor collects all this stuff, and next thing you know, it's just overwhelmed and it's running 100%, and now we don't know why we can't stream. So limit the tasks as much as possible. If you can set aside if you're using software to stream with an encoder, if you can ideally set that computer aside to just do streaming video, then your world will be a lot happier.
All right. Number 5, disable under other connections.
Yeah, I kind of threw this in here. I mean, again, this kind of gets back to if you're able to not allow people on your Wi-Fi, because even if you've got Ethernet, if you're on the same network, and some people are using your Ethernet, it's going to affect, or some people are using your Wi-Fi, I should say, it's going to affect you even if you're using Ethernet. So if you can disable some certain connections during a period of time while you're streaming, if you can do some things to keep other people off your network, ideally, we have a lot of churches, well, not a lot, we have some that I know of that have a separate network that they use for streaming.
Right. And the key to that is a lot of people say, well, I've got a separate network. Well, if you're going through the same ISP, you don't have a separate network.
That's true.
So if you need, in order to truly have a separate network for some people and another set of people going out, you've got to have 2 ISPs, or two different ISPs. We actually did that at our church for a while. We had a cable ISP and a DSL ISP, and they would not interfere with each other. But if I have a separate network, but they all go through the same modem going out on the internet, you don't have a separate network.
That's true. Yeah, that's a good point to bring up. Yeah, I remember that. So let's talk a little bit about video quality versus stream quality. There are actually some differences here. So when we're talking about improving your streaming video experience today, sometimes you might need to change the video quality in order to have better stream quality. It sounds like a dichotomy. Is that the word I'm looking for?
Let's clarify what is video quality versus
So
stream
video
quality.
quality, you can 1080p, that's pixels, or if you want to go higher quality, you can even go higher than 1080p these days. So your video quality is what people see on pure video, what you're looking at, but then you're going to take that and you're going to stream it through the internet. And that's where things can get a little goofy sometimes. Because if your resolution's really high and you've got to have the bit rate to back that up. And if you don't have that set up right, and if you've got problems with your service provider or other people on the other end can't get what you're streaming because you're streaming at such a high quality, it's going to create problems for people, dropouts and buffering.
All right. So
are you with me?
So there's video quality, which you're talking about, which is resolution, which is the 4K and the HD and the 1080p. Right. And then stream quality is kind of the combination of what resolution at what bit rate are you sending that resolution, which is going to result in, and you already mentioned it, is the higher the video quality, the higher the bit rate is necessary to push that because it's just more data.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of, I always liken it to the old days of the carburation. You and I can relate to this. If you want to go faster, you're going to have to give it more gas. It's going to take more gas. It's going to use more gas to go faster in your car. Well, I mean, in some ways that's true. If you have a really high video resolution, you're going to have to up the bit rate to fuel that, because otherwise you'll get what's called pixelation, and that's where you get these little squares that keep popping up in your video, and people, are kind of jumping around. They look like they're robots sometimes. So I just want to say this too, that most people, honestly, the majority of people watching streaming video today are watching it on this device. And if you're watching if you just have audio, you don't know what I'm holding up, but I'm holding up a mobile phone, and they're not watching it on my phone because my phone's archaic. But most people are watching on mobile devices, and most of the mobile devices don't have huge 46-inch screens, because otherwise they wouldn't be mobile, right? So you don't have to have this huge, we got to do this, make it look, 4K. You don't have to do that. You can get away with a lower resolution and it still looks fine on,
it would be, I would challenge anyone to say, you could throw a bunch of screens in front of them and say, which one is at 480p and which one is at 4K on the phone? Because on the phone, you just can't tell the difference. It's kind of like, people they gravitate to, the current trend is 4K. So let's, I want to send 4K. It's kind of like my son's roommate was talking about, I've got to have Dannon water, and it's better than the Evian water, and then which is so much better than the tap water. And so he did all these tests where he just took the same, different water and put it exact same temperature, exact same container, and they had no idea what they were drinking, even tap water.
It's like the Pepsi test, right, or whatever.
Yeah. So the quality, you may go, oh, that's 4K, but you can't tell on a cell phone.
Yeah, I think so. And I had to mention something and I lost my train of thought because I'm getting old. But unless you're streaming on flat screen TVs, and some churches are doing something like that. They are, they're streaming to huge TVs. And you definitely want to up the video.
Definitely notice on a big screen.
Yeah, you're going to notice it on a big screen TV. But all right. So let's move on here for the sake of time, which kind of ties into the next point, and that is when you want to talk about streaming quality, you may need to adjust your video bit rate. So this is what's on the encoder. And there's actually some recommendations out there on the internet that, you got to stream six megabytes per second for 1080p or something. And I would just strongly disagree with that, unless you're doing maybe something on a flat screen TV. So I would, one of the things, again, that's going to improve your stream and people able to watch it without buffering and stuff is making sure you find that bit rate that works, that there's a good balance there where you're happy with the picture, but people can still see it. We have adaptive bit rate, which is a whole nother subject we won't get into. But if you stream a really high bit rate, it's not only hard on your internet where you're at, which we've been talking about, what your upload speed is, but other people can have a problem getting it as well. They can have a problem digesting your stream, so to speak. Adjust the bit rate.
There's definitely a sweet spot. So you got to take into effect not only what you can do, but what people can consume. And just like you said, people are going to be on different networks, on different devices, and you want to make the most people really happy. So if you're saying, well, I'm a purist and I'm going to just send 4K and I don't care if you don't have the right equipment, you can't watch it at all, you're going to be missing out. So there is a sweet spot that's going to be really high quality and look really good and work everywhere on all the devices.
Yeah, and we do have features like adaptive bitrate, which we can get into, which maybe could help you if if you want to stream a high quality stream and a medium quality stream and a low quality. We could work with you. Transcoding is another thing, which is actually more expensive, but there's ways around that. But for what you're saying is true, Steve, and that is, let's find the sweet spot. Let's find what we are comfortable with, and we may have to make some adjustments. Speaking of adjustments on your encoder, change your frames per second. So what's called FPS, frames per second, is also something that can help your video, help when you're streaming. We recommend around 30 frames per second. 29.97 is one that's very common. Some people like to use 60 frames per second, but the higher you go with your frames per second, and I'm talking here on your live encoder, your setting on your live encoder, the higher you go, it's going to take more processing power to do that. And you may have a problem there with your computer.
Yeah. And if you're broadcasting, a Formula One race, probably want to go 60 frames per second, or maybe even a basketball game where there's just a ton of movement.
Right.
But if you're doing a church service where there's typically a pastor just speaking and he's not running and jumping and slam dunking and switching the background and all that stuff, 30 frames per second is great. It'll be perfect for you, and you can get away with, more people are going to be able to view it, and lower bandwidth requirements and that sort of thing. So yeah, we recommend for doing church services, 30 frames per second. If you're going to, fast moving things, then you're gonna be a different arena.
Yeah. You're probably not, unless you're doing relay races or something. All right, so we'll spend a couple minutes here while we wrap up on the last couple points here. And that is, again, if you want to have a good streaming experience for everybody, look at your CPU on your computer, your processor. You might want to beef that up so that you don't have problems. You might want to look at your graphics card, look at your video capture card or your video capture device. We're probably going to put this on our blog at streamingchurch.tv, so we won't spend a lot of time on this. But there are some things that you can do on your actual computer if you have a live encoder that you stream with on your computer. Remember, at the top of this podcast, I mentioned there's also hardware encoders, which wouldn't really be involved with your computer. But if you're using software, there are some recommendations for the amount of CPU you should have, what you have, the video cards you should have, even the video capture devices. I don't know if we want to get into all this stuff specifically, but we can. But it's some stuff that you might want to look at, and you could get away with a little less depending on what you're doing.
Right, exactly. And there's some minimums, but for the most part, most computers are going to be able to stream and encode and send a signal out. So, but you do want to be aware, and all the encoders will tell you, what the CPU level for the total computer is while you're encoding. And you want to keep that, below 80%.
Yeah.
and because you're just asking for trouble. And
Yeah.
and what happens is the more movement you have or that sort of thing, the harder this thing has to work. So
Yeah, switching cameras a lot, having lots of multiple things going on your encoder, that all adds up. And every live encoder that I'm aware of has something that's total CPU. vMix has it. Total CPU is what you want to look at. Wirecast has it. Different ones, even OBS. So yeah, and we have those recommendations if you want them. You can just reach out to us. We'll give you those as well. Or you can just find them. Just if you wanted to go to vmix.com, which is a live encoder, we like them. They'll give you specs, which is pretty much what we recommend and go by. So the last point that I've got on this is, and I think it's important to do this even if you are pretty comfortable with the way things are going, is to do some dry runs and check your results on a regular basis. So what I'm getting at here is test. And I know the church realm. I know the church world. I've been in it for over 40 years. You've been in it for probably almost that long too, Steve. There's this tendency to be this last minute stuff, like, oh, we're going to start at 10 o'clock. We got 5 minutes. Try to build some margin in. If you're a tech person right now, or a senior pastor, or anybody on your church leadership team of some capacity, you should recommend building some margin in, so that your people are not running around the last minute before a service starts. And I know that's hard, but it can be done. And so give yourself plenty of time to boot up the computers, to run some tests. If you're going to do something, Steve, you guys do this at your church really well. I mean, you guys have pre-service meetings and you check things on lighting, you check things on camera angles, right?
we
Right before the
do.
service. You don't do it
Well,
usually a minute before. You usually do it plenty of time. So,
we do.
yeah.
Yeah, we do a run through, and so the whole service, not the pastor doesn't speak for his allotted time, but he does a mic check. But the worship band runs through every song. So
Yeah.
there's a whole run through that we're trying testing, making sure the mix is right, and the stream is working, and cameras are still working, and all that sort of thing. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe doing every song might seem a little extreme to some people, but at least do some of this. At least do some audio checks and do something. Do it for a song at least one, the bare minimum, and make sure the lighting's right. Make sure gets, in these movies they have stand-ins. Well, get a stand-in. If your pastor can't stand on the platform because he or she is getting ready, get somebody that's similar size and have them stand, make sure the shots are good, the lighting's good. And then, with your streaming, check it out. And maybe during the week, if you're able to do that as well, check if you want to tweak something, which is, we're always tweaking things, at least you should be, make sure when you tweak something that it works after you've tried it, after you've changed the setting, make sure it's going to connect and it's going to come off the way you like it to do. And this is at the end of our list here today, but it's one of the most important things you can do.
right, exactly. All right, well, this is good. We've
We're done.
equipped our people
We've
for
done that. We've
better
done this.
quality streaming.
Yeah, we've done this before and we'll do it again, no doubt. So if you have questions about this, those of you listening, and we appreciate your time today, please reach out to us. Just support at streamingchurch.tv, or you can just go to our website, streamingchurch.tv, and you can chat with us during our business hours here in Arizona, or leave us an email or a message, and we'll help you any way we can. That's what we do. We do what we do here because we love helping churches, and we want to help churches reach people and connect with their people. So, Steve, thank you so much for your time today.
All right, good to be here.
All right, and I'm Phil Thompson. Mike Gray wasn't with us today. He was out doing something on his Jeep. He'll probably be with us back next week. But on behalf of all of us here at streamingchurch.tv, the whole team here, thank you for spending some time with us. Please take care of yourself. We'll catch you again next time on another edition of the Church Solutions Podcast. Take care.